there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. My name is Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is the short show I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game topic, a top 10 list, or something else that just happens to be on my mind. There's a lot of great games and game-related topics to talk about, and for reasons that I'll explain in a moment, or as we get through this, I have been really in a Stefan Feld mood lately. So Stefan Feld is, of course, a well-known game designer, and he has done a lot of bigger games that have had a good deal of success. His probably most famous is The Castles of Burgundy. That might show up on the list. But he's done a lot of other ones, too. He tends to come out with one game every year. For the most part, they're well received, although, he does have some duds. He has enough that I can do a top 10. And so I thought, well, sure, why not? Let's talk about the best Stefan Feld games, according to me, according to today. So we're going to start from number 10. I'll show you the game. I'll tell you a little bit about it, maybe some things that I like about it, and we can keep going until we get to number 1. And so, with that out of the way, let's get in to number 10. All right, my number 10 game is a castles game. This game is called Castles of Tuscany. So Castles of Tuscany is a pretty interesting game where you have this board and you're going to be gathering tiles and filling up these little hexagonal-looking things. And each of the different tiles that you're going to take is going to give you different special abilities, and ultimately you're trying to get the most points. There's really not a lot of theme here, and I will warn you that that's a common theme with Stefan Feld games. But ultimately, it's all about managing your very limited number of turns to the best of your ability, trying to get cards that'll be helpful, getting workers to help you improve things, and sort of filling up your board with the matching colors. I do think it is weaker than Castles of Burgundy. When this came out, it was sort of anticipated that it would be a renaissance of Castles of Burgundy, which of course it was not. It's a separate game, and you could like one and not like the other. But I enjoy it. I think it's an interesting game, and it is number 10 on my list, Castles of Tuscany. Let's go on now to number 9. My number 9 is a game that I have not played in a little while. I remember this game this game is interesting just because when it came out, it was really popular, and it came out from Tasty Minstrel, who kind of went out of business, and so it's been hard to find. It is kind of the Grail game for Stefan Feld fans, I guess. I don't know, but I enjoy it. The game is called Luna, and in Luna, you've got some kind of a moon priestess, and you're going to be, moving up on a track, getting bonuses, spreading yourself off across lots of these little islands. It's been a while since I've played it, like I mentioned, but it's not particularly thematic. Again, common for Stefan Feld games. But one thing I like about Luna and all the other games is the rules tend to be pretty simple, and once you get into it, it's an easy one to pick up. I know that some people are kind of rabid for this game, so maybe they would have it higher than number 9, but I remember really enjoying it, and it actually, now that I'm talking about it, I can kind of see it in the closet in there, and I want to get it out and play it. So, you're appeasing a moon priestess and some mystical things. Not really a lot of theme, but still a pretty solid game and one worth looking at. Number 9, Luna. Let's go on to number. All right, my number 8 is the first Stefan Feld game that I played. And I just remember when it came out, I thought, oh, this is something different. The game has the very English name of Die Speicherstadt. I believe the English name is The Speicherstadt. So that doesn't really help. The game is set in Hamburg, I believe, and you are building stuff and fulfilling orders and getting goods. But really, kind of most Stefan Feld games have kind of a shtick, and the shtick in this one is the way that you're going to bid for things. So you've got these tracks, and you're going to put your worker out, and if you put your worker out first, you can buy the thing at the cheapest price. But other people can come and put their worker above you, which means they have a chance to buy it before you do, but they'll pay more for it. And so then you can go in, and you can there's this interesting auction that's not really a direct auction. You're also fulfilling contracts with your standard cloth and tobacco and rubber, I guess, well, whatever it happens to be. There's also fires that are going to happen at certain intervals, and you want to be highest on the fire track. I will say another kind of hallmark of Stefan Feld games is disasters. Not in every game, but a lot of his games will have sort of a predictable disaster matrix that you are going to suffer some penalties if you don't plan for them. And in this game, that's the fire. It was reprinted. It had a weird name. Jövrik, I think, is what it was called. It was reprinted by Stronghold Games. Yeah, Jövrik. I really enjoyed it. I think my rating's wrong on BGG, but I remember really liking it, and it's one that I'm still willing to get out even after all these years. It's really simple. It does work better. I mean, there's sort of a golden player count for it, but I enjoy Die Speicherstadt. I also love the name. There's also an expansion, I believe. I don't know if I've actually played with the expansion. I might have to look that up. Anyway, let's go on to number 7. All right, my number 7 is if Stefan Feld had made a roll and write, or sorry, a roll and move game, it would be this. And in fact, it is this game. The game is called Merlin. So again, oops, I meant to hit this banner. Where is Merlin? There we go. Merlin, my number 7. So in this game, you're kind of thematically in King Arthur's court. When I say thematically, I mean in theory. But what you're going to be doing is you're kind of using these dice to move clockwise, I believe it's clockwise, around this board. And so you're going to select the dice and use them to move around the board, and then you have a Merlin that can move backwards around the board. And the spot you land in is going to tell you which action you can do. And as in many Stefan Feld games, there's things to do. You can put things out on this area here to get some points. You can fight various invading tribes to get some points. And you're going to specialize in something. And ultimately, there's not really very much theme, but it looks good, and it has this interesting sort of round table track, which is kind of evocative. You can use, of course, another kind of hallmark of his games is the ability to use some bonus to manipulate dice. If you're not careful, the various invading armies will come and attack you, but you can kind of see which ones they are so that you can prepare by placing the right shields out, I believe. And that's kind of how it's going to be going. Again, it's an interesting take because roll and move is not a very loved mechanism in board games these days. Yet in this one, there's enough manipulation and simplicity that you don't really feel like you're stuck and playing a game that plays itself for you. So there's a bunch of expansions for this, and one of them was really good. I haven't played the other one. Anyway, there you go. My number 7 is Merlin. Time now for my number 6. My number 6 is not a looker. How shall we say it other than that? The game is, I think this was my second Stefan Feld game that I played. And it is probably the most complicated of them. And this one is called Macau. Now, it was reprinted in a version called Amsterdam, that I haven't played, but it's roughly the same game. So in this game, it's really a weird It's a difficult one to describe. So you have these dice that you're going to roll, and you don't use them, but what they're going to give you is you're going to select the dice, and based upon the number, like if you selected a 5, a purple 5, it would give you 5 purple cubes in 5 rounds. Now, of course, you need stuff now, and there are spankings if you don't do certain things within certain time frames. You constantly have to take these cards, and if you can't play a card and clear off your board, you'll suffer penalties. And then you're going to use the cubes to do a variety of different activities. You can pay certain combos to play one of the cards, which you definitely need to do. They'll give you different special abilities, sometimes one-time use, sometimes ongoing. You'll use cubes to move around on this shipping track. You'll just, you'll move your little thing along, and as you get to certain spots, you can drop off goods. You can also place your tokens out on this market over here to get the goods, and all of it's going to give you points. Here's that little wheel. So, I mean, this person's taking a lot of red, but ultimately, that's kind of the central mechanism, is this dice draft, and what you're actually taking is the cubes, and unless you're choosing a 1, you can always choose between a strong action much later or a weak action much sooner, and I find that to be a really fascinating balance. So anyway, I would like to get Macau because the Amsterdam version, because this Macau is really kind of ugly. But from what I've seen, the Amsterdam version uses a lot of symbols, and this one uses text. So, that's better. And the Amsterdam version is really quite expensive from what I've seen. Anyway, doesn't matter. I enjoy Macau. It's one that I would love to get out again soon. And it is my number 6. So there we go. Let's move on now to my number 5. All right. Number 5 is the reason Mr. Feld is on my mind. So I was recently at the Dice Tower Retreat, and I talked about this game. A game came out on Kickstarter as part of a reprint of several Stefan Feld games, including Amsterdam and Hamburg, which is a reprint of Bruges and a couple other ones. But there was also going to be a new one, and that new one is my number 5. It is called Marrakesh. So Marrakesh is Marrakesh is a lot. First of all, it's $120, so take that into account if you're looking into it. But what you're doing in this game essentially is you have this one player's board, and you're trying to fill up all these various little spots with these little tokens. Now, the game really tries to make you call them caches, and I refuse to do so. They're just tokens and pillars. But anyway, when you fill up the spots, it's going to make the actions more successful. And every round, you're going to be choosing 3 actions to do. And so, for example, this green action down here, if I do this green action with a strength of 1, I get 1 date, which is a currency in the game. But if I do the action with a strength of 4, I'm getting 4 for just that action. So you're encouraged to try and fill up these areas. You also get a lot of bonus points at the end of the game if you're successful. Now, the oddity of this game is it uses the cube tower, and although these are not cubes, essentially there's this contraption, and you're going to select a few tokens each round, and then ultimately drop them into this tower, which I can't seem to find in a picture. You'll drop them into this tower. Well, pretend there's a tower, and some of them are going to come out, and some of them are going to get stuck in. And so what you and your fellow players select might not be what becomes available, but then you're going to take turns drafting them, and that's going to improve your various actions. It's a really interesting balance. The rules are not hard. It's just, with, I believe, 12 different colors and 10 different areas that you're going to be going for. There's a lot to focus on, a lot of different options. As is normal for Stefan Feld games, you have some kind of a disaster, but in this one, you get to pick, you get your 3 disasters at the beginning, and you get to pick the order that they're going to come out. So you have a lot of control over that, and it ends up not being a big deal. Anyway, this is a game that, although I say it's a lot, and it is, excuse me, it is one that after I've played it, I just can't stop thinking about it. So there you go. It is my number 5, and I look forward to playing it again soon once I can get a copy for less than $120. Next up, let's move on to my number 4. So my number 4 is an ugly game that is also difficult to purchase. What I mean is, first of all, we'll look at the game. It is Carpe Diem, um, but the version I'm going to show here is different than the version I have. So this game came out, and it has these tiles in it. It has green tiles, and then there's sort of level 2 tiles that don't come out in the common market. And the way you were to distinguish between them was one was green on the back and one was a slightly different shade of green on the back. It was really very poorly designed. The graphic design in general on this game is pretty abysmal. Everything looks kind of very cheap and prototypey, even when it's set up like this blobby thing is some sort of a building that's actually going to score lots of points. And the components have a cheap and poorly produced feel. Now, that does not sound like a ringing endorsement, and to be clear, it is not. I don't endorse cheap quality in game production, but the game itself is really interesting. It kind of revolves around this board here, and you're going to be moving your guy, and he's going to cross these lines. And I believe in another version of it, you just move to the left and right, which is ultimately the same thing. It's just you're going to be crossing around this area. You're going to be bouncing around, and as areas empty out, you're going to be skipping over them. So you're going to go, in a direction, and then you're going to take one of the tiles and put it in your little domain. The rules here are really simple. You're trying to complete things. There's bonuses, and at the end of the round, you're forced to score a bonus. And so, the first player has best choice of bonuses. So you want to make sure that you're able to get the bonus you want, and then it's largely not able to be scored again. But it's going to be there's this weird track. It's kind of difficult to set up actually, but you're going to put your token between a couple of bonuses and score both of them. So anyway, Carpe Diem is an interesting game. The rules are super simple once you get into it. In the abstract, it's a little harder. Here you go. Look at this. This is an example. So you can see here, this is what I was talking about. These ones here, these are the basic ones. And this one here is the advanced one. And so there's just a very different shade of, a slight variation in a shade of green. If it's poor lighting or you have any problem seeing colors, this would be very difficult. I think what I did is I just took a marker and put a dot on the back of the of the darker ones. I think the newer versions of the game have fixed this, but it's, I believe, hard to tell from the box which one is the new version. So the game, again, does not win any points for production, but as a game, it's pretty solid, and it's my number 4 Stefan Feld game, Carpe Diem. Let's go on to my number 3. All right, my number 3 is the most different Stefan Feld game. In fact, if you play it, it just doesn't even, if you were to sit down with the game and know nothing about it, you wouldn't even know it was a Stefan Feld game, because this game is kind of a race. The game is called, where's my banner? Here's my banner, Oracle of Delphi. And in Oracle of Delphi, what you're doing is you're trying to complete certain goals before any other player. And you're going to be moving around on this map, selecting actions, doing your normal Stefan Feld game things. But rather than a bunch of points, you're just racing around to get the points. I remember this one being a lot of fun. There's a lot to focus on. You'd like kill some monsters and do some other things. And of course, it was very Eurogamey, but it was a really interesting twist on sort of the game design philosophy of this designer. It is a difficult one to set up. I remember, so you've got this board out here, you can see, but it's made up of all these different tiles, and I remember it being kind of a mess to set up, to the point that one time I said to somebody who wanted to play it, I will teach you the game, but you need to set it up yourself, because I just didn't want to sit down and mess with the company. Excuse me, that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to sit down and mess with the setup, because it's just a really weird setup to lay out this board. Anyway, the game's an interesting Greece theme with really no theme at all, but a lot of fun and an interesting sort of efficiency puzzle that's not like anything else out there. My number 3, Oracle of Delphi. All right, time for the top 2. Okay, so the top 2 are, I think if you would ask most Stefan Feld fans, these are probably going to be their top 2 as well. I think these are far and away his best games. They're the ones that he's certainly gotten the most acclaim for, and the one that, even people who don't love some of his other games really enjoy. The first of these, of course, is Bruges. Now, Bruges was reprinted as Hamburg, again with a whole lot of symbols on the cards instead of text, which is a definite no for me, especially in this one, because there's lots of unique cards in this game. So what you have is this beige board, and you have a long victory point track. You're trying to build this canal on both sides of your city gate, and you're going to be mostly selecting and playing cards. And so you have this deck of cards, and you're going to be taking them, and the cards have a color, and they're all going to be used for a variety of different purposes. You can use them to gain money. You can use them to build a house. You can use them to take workers, and workers are, of course, used to pay for various actions. The value of the cards is going to vary from round to round based upon this die roll, these dice that you roll. And so the higher value dice are going to make the cards worth more money, and money's hard to come by unless, of course, you can get it that way. But the real value or interesting thing about the game is that all these cards have a bunch of different effects. There are, end game scoring cards, ongoing abilities, immediate bonuses, and every turn you have this interesting puzzle of what am I going to do with this card? I have so many choices. And that's kind of what there is about this game that kind of makes it sing, is you've got a lot of options. This is one of those games where you really always have something you can do. And I think that's fantastic. Of course, the game does have disasters, as many Stefan Feld games do. The disasters are going to come up, and I believe whenever there's 3 of a kind out, it's going to impact you. But you can pay to get rid of those disasters and get some modicum of a bonus for doing so. So you're always able to kind of manage when a disaster is likely to appear and figure out, whether you care about that, because there may be a disaster you don't care about. You're like, you don't have what it's going to affect you with, so who cares? Or you can, plan for it and make sure that you're ready when and if it comes. There's a lot to focus on here. There's also this interesting sort of scoring where there's a couple of factors that are scored, like how many canals you've put out or how far you are on the boring track. And all you have to do is be in the lead one time. So you're going to try and get into the lead on something, and then you don't care if somebody passes you, which is an interesting way to do it. Thematically, there's nothing here, but hundreds of different cards with lots of different combinations. It's just a fascinating game that I really kind of want to get out and play right now. And it is my number 2 best Stefan Feld game, Bruges. Let's go on now to the only number 1. And number 1 was always going to be the Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy is largely... Are we back? Yes, we are. The Castles of Burgundy is my number 1, largely regarded as Mr. Feld's best game design. This is a fantastic game of kind of dice use. You have 25 turns, and I have this fancy version. Oh, that's not, that's the Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Hold on. I have a fancy version of that, too. Let's see if we can't show the real game here. Oh, I wasn't even showing you. The Castles of Burgundy, I have the special edition, which has minis and recessed player boards and nice tiles. But ultimately, it's my most played Stefan Feld game by a mile. But what you have is, on your turn, you're going to roll 2 dice, and you're going to use those dice to take a variety of actions. You can use them to take tokens from this board. You can use them to put the tokens onto your little principality out here. There's an expansion with some vines where you can take some grapes and plant them on a separate board. You can turn them in, you can use the dice to sell goods and turn them into points and money. You can also take a free action if you have 2 coins. All the different things that are involved get you various levels of bonuses. The new version actually looks good. The original version looked very ugly. I like one of the small bonuses in the new version is that the castles are this red or burgundy color rather than green like they were in the original. But it's just, look, there's no theme here. There's also no disasters, which is nice. You've got 25 turns. It's definitely a game of efficiency, but you can pick something and decide to go for it. Ultimately, the most of your points are going to come from filling in these various areas. The bigger the area you fill, the more points you'll get. And the sooner you fill it in, the more points you'll get. So there's a lot of balance there. Lots of different things to try. Lots of different strategies you can go for. There's a bunch of small expansions that are mostly just small add-ins that are, an easy thing to take and run with. But the Castles of Burgundy is a classic that really holds up well. And, this one and Bruges are the games that this designer will be remembered for. I think, when I do my top 100, Castles is almost certainly on my list. It's a game that I would rate probably a 9 out of 10, if not higher. And it's a great Stefan Feld game. These all are, some are better than others, obviously. And Stefan Feld is a prolific designer, one definitely to check out. Look, if you're looking for, American-style adventure games, maybe he's not for you. But if you want tight and well-designed puzzles or, efficiency puzzles or Euro-style games or sort of some interesting take on a familiar mechanism, Stefan Feld will not disappoint you. He is a consistent producer of great games. Like I said earlier, not all of his were hits. I hated Aquasphere. And then even worse is, what is that game? Bonfire. Bonfire is an absolute disaster. But many of his games have been real hits and have really resonated with me. Anyway, that's it. I've waxed on about Mr. Feld long enough. And so I'm going to end it here. I thank you for joining me as we've walked through the wonderful world of Stefan Feld games. And I'm going to wish you safe travels and courage when you need it. And I hope to see you back next week on another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.